I think it's safe to say that right now is the best time to be a cozy gamer, as there are just so many more games to choose from than ever before. But with there being basically new cozy game releases almost every single week, it can get difficult to figure out what games are worth it and what games might be worth skipping. So I've decided to put together a list of all of the cozy games that I've played recently, and today I'm gonna rank them. Now this ranking is gonna go from S tier all the way down to F tier. Now F tier games are the games which I simply just don't recommend. They're games that I didn't enjoy my time with and ultimately didn't find to be very fun whatsoever. S tier games, on the other hand, are the complete opposite, and these are the games which I will recommend to everyone. These will be among some of the best cozy games of all time, and are simply just games that were so fun, I couldn't put them down. And as you can see, we have a lot of cozy games to get through today, 27 to be exact, and these range from being absolutely incredible and some of my favorite cozy games of all time, and being a little bit of a mess, so let's get into it. First up, let's talk about Cast and Chill. Now this caught my eye because actually I am a lover of idle games. The issue is they are almost exclusively on a PC, but with Cast and Chill they have finally made their way over to the Nintendo Switch as well. And this is exactly what it says it is. It is a chill fishing game. And essentially all you do is drive your boat around, catch fish, sell them, and upgrade your boat and fishing rod to catch bigger and more expensive fish. And the more you fish, the more areas that will open up to you, and the more unique types of fish that you can catch. Now what made this stand out particularly to me is the fact that you can either play this actively or passively. So you can either do the fishing all yourself, which thankfully is not that difficult, there's no Stardew Valley fishing here, or you can set this to idle mode and let the game fish for you like with a classical idle game. And it also helps that this game is absolutely stunning both on PC and Nintendo Switch. And because I am such a sucker for idle games, I am going to put this in A tier because I think it belongs there. It's a game I go to whenever I'm busy or if I just want to relax. And honestly, idle games deserve more love in the cozy gaming community. Next, let's talk about Starsand Island. Now, for those who don't know, Starsand Island is a life and farming sim that is absolutely gorgeous. And it released into early access just over a week ago. And this is destined to come to both the Switch and the Switch 2 when it fully releases sometime later this year. And I think it's safe to say it's had a little bit of a rocky start after its release. Now, as you can probably tell, I have taken my time trying to figure out my feelings about Starsand Island, because honestly, it's really complicated. And even though this game is in early access and the developers have been incredibly active in trying to update and improve the game, I think it does need a lot of work to be the game that they set out for this to be. Now, I do actually think this game has an incredibly solid foundation. You see, the main gameplay loop is essentially you doing different tasks to try and level up 5 of the core professions, which is crafting, farming, fishing, ranching, and exploring. And each of these professions have their own mentor who will give you different challenges and tasks you need to complete to level up each of the professions. Now, I will say this gameplay loop is a lot more similar to the likes of my time at Sandrock than it is to Stardew Valley, as nearly every single one of these professions is going to involve a whole lot of crafting. And even though these quests are most definitely a little bit buggy, as you would expect with an early access game, I did have a lot of fun with them. And I love the fact that this was a farming and life sim where you actually had stuff to do nearly all of the time. Now, most of these professions were pretty self-explanatory, but personally, my favorite was the explorer profession, which saw you take on the ancient mines, where you had to complete different challenges in order to get deeper into the mines. And this could either be things like catching a certain amount of bugs, or it could even be boss fights. The ranching was also a lot of fun, and even though at first it was very overwhelming just by the sheer amount of animals that you have and taking care of them, once you automate things a little bit, it was a lot more fun, and there was even an entire breeding mechanic in there as well. There were also some wonderful quality of life features in the game, some of which you get right from the start, like being able to stack items in your chests without even needing to open them. And some you could unlock through a skill tree, like the ability to craft for items anywhere, not just at a crafting table. The only issue is, all of these quests just didn't really have a point. You see, the game itself doesn't have a main storyline whatsoever, and there's also no overarching goal, unlike the likes of Stardew Valley, which has a community center, or even Animal Crossing, which has you trying to reach 3 stars and getting KK Slider. And without an overarching goal, you also don't have any rewards to work towards either, and it kind of made some stuff that you did in the game feel at times a little bit pointless. Now, the developers have said they're looking to add this into the game as we speak, but you might want to hold off buying it if this is something you're really looking for. Another thing missing in early access is the relationships. Unfortunately, the NPCs in this game are pretty bland. And despite the fact that a lot of the trailers for this game were centered around cutscenes, there's actually very few of them in the game whatsoever. So far, I've found them to only be when you meet a character for the first time, with a few voice acted lines, but other than that, there is nothing you can do to trigger another cutscene. Again, the developers have said this is something they're adding into the game, but it was very much missing when I played it. Another thing the game was desperately missing was events. There were only 3 events for the entire in-game year, which meant that it took around 20 hours or so of gameplay to hit an event. And even though the events themselves are a lot of fun, with you doing some quests before the events actually start to help them run, and then the event itself having a number of different mini games for you to play, again, the event was pretty buggy, which is to be expected in an early access game. Finally, let's talk a little bit about the decorating, as it became pretty clear to me that this is a large focus of this game. As not only do you have a large array of items to decorate with, the building is what really surprised me, as you'll be able to build entire buildings from the base building blocks. And even though at first this felt incredibly overwhelming, it's actually not too complicated once you get the hang of all the controls, even on controller. Again, as we are just 1 week into early access, this was a pretty buggy experience still, but as I said, the developers have been putting out patches nearly every single day to fix all these bugs, but definitely worth bearing in mind if this is a game you're thinking of getting. Overall, as I said, I just feel really mixed about my experience with Starsand Island so far. It's got a lot of potential, but it's also in a very rough state at the moment. I think if we're being entirely honest, my issue is I just didn't expect it to be in this early access. Because whilst I was anticipating seeing things like bugs, I wasn't expecting the game to be missing quite this many major elements. And I think for most people considering buying Starsand Island, the answer is to just wait. And I think if we take everything into account, from the bugs to the content missing, even though I had a good time with it, I can't really recommend it right now. But I will say keep an eye on it, so I'm going to put this in the C tier. Next up, let's talk about a brand new co-op game, and that is LEGO Voyagers. Ever since I finished Split Fiction, I have been on the lookout for more co-op games. So when LEGO Voyagers came out, I was so excited to play it. Now this is unlike every co-op experience you've ever played before, because in this you play as 2 single LEGO blocks. And I never thought I'd find LEGO blocks cute, but here we are. They are absolutely adorable. And essentially the game follows them on their journey to try and repair an abandoned spaceship. Now, one thing that really surprised me about this was the fact that they were able to tell an entire story with just 2 Lego bricks with 1 eyeball each, who don't speak a single word, and yet you manage to feel so much. And this is a true co-op experience, allowing you to either play online together or in couch co-op, both only requiring 1 copy of the game. But I love the fact that this has genuine puzzles in it that you can only solve by working together and having decent communication. So this is one of those games where you definitely need to be able to speak to the other person that you're playing with in order for you to manage some of the levels. But of course, being Lego bricks, a lot of the puzzles are going to revolve around you building Lego. And this involves your tiny little Lego brick rolling around, connecting itself to other pieces of Lego and rolling with it to try and get it somewhere where it needs to be. I had a lot of fun with this, and whilst it definitely isn't quite on the same level to It Takes Two and Split Fiction, it was still a really fun and unique co-op experience. My only complaint is that I thought it was just a little bit too short. So for that reason, I think I'm going to put it in the B tier, but it is a very high B tier contender. Next up, let's talk about a very recent release, and that is Cozy Caravan. Now, this game was off to an incredible start when I first booted it up, as the character creation in this is completely and utterly adorable. And not only do you have a ton of different creatures that you can pick from, each more adorable than the last, but then when you finally decide on which creature you want to be you then have a bunch of different colors to pick from as well. Just perfection. And once you get past this, you're then on to the main game. And this sees you become what they call a guild rookie. And your main job as a guild rookie is simply to help other people, which means that you'll be driving around to different towns in your caravan, finding as many people you can help as possible. But your job as a guild rookie doesn't stop there, as on the weekends you run a market stall. You see, every single person that you've helped out throughout the week will give you various different ingredients. And you'll be able to use these in your caravan to make up different meals which you can sell on the market stall at the weekend. And essentially the main gameplay loop to this is fetch quests. Because with every town that you go to, you'll find a bunch of people in desperate need of your help. And these quests can be anything from helping people out on their farms, giving various villagers lifts to other neighboring towns, or even helping out at a restaurant when it's busy. And of course, you have your classical fetch quest, which is simply just giving a character an item that they're after. My only issue with some of these fetch quests was sometimes they felt a little bit frustrating. Like for example, one of the towns I went to, there were two people who needed a lift. Both of them needed a lift to a similar place, but I could only take one person at a time, which meant I needed to spend quite a lot of time basically just traveling from point A to point B to then double back on myself completely to get the other person and do the same thing. And whilst I am a lover of a good fetch quest, sometimes it's a bit frustrating when they get made to feel so needlessly inefficient. This is most definitely not a game that you can rush or do at a fast pace whatsoever, as not only do the fetch quests force you to take things slow, but so do the cooking mechanics. You see, cooking is a pretty integral part to this game. It is the main core component of the market, where you get to take all the ingredients that you got from doing the fetch quests and turn them into more valuable meals that you can sell at the market. The issue is that a lot of the ingredients that you get will need several processing steps before you can use them to make a recipe. So for example, your wheat needs to be ground into flour, your sugarcane needs to be turned into sugar, and each of these steps all have a minigame. So as I said, this isn't a negative, the minigames are fun to do, but it is worth bearing in mind that this is a slower paced game and not something like Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar where you'll be churning out massive amounts to sell at the market. Overall though, this game is absolutely gorgeous. It does look a lot better on the PC than it does the Nintendo Switch. And by the way, if you're not a fan of this stop motion sort of style, you can go into the menu and disable it if you want a smoother looking gameplay. But personally, I do really like the vibe of this. Overall, I would say that this is a fun game. It just needs a few little tweaks here and there, I think, to make the fetch quest feel fully complete. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. Next up, let's very quickly touch on a game that I did not get along well with, and that is Tamagotchi Plaza. I won't spend too long on this because I've talked about how much I dislike this many times, but essentially this is a game where if you enjoyed the previous Tamagotchi games, this will be for you. If you have never played a Tamagotchi game before, the chances are this will probably not be the best spend of your money. Essentially, this is just a series of mini-games. Now, some of these mini-games are fun, other mini-games are incredibly cursed, and some mini-games did not make a whole lot of sense when playing them, which is a shame when there are 0 instructions. This game doesn't really have a story, there's not really much in the way of progression, and if you want to get through the game, you do need to play every single minigame it has. So overall, I just found this to be a game I did not come back to whatsoever, and it's just not a game I recommend. And as someone who's never played a previous Tamagotchi game, I'm going to put this in the F tier. Speaking of games we've spoken about a lot before, let's get a few of my favorites out of the way. First up, we have Fantasy Life: The Girl Who Steals Time. One of my most played cozy games of the year because it just had everything I was after. This had a really fun gameplay loop, a progression system that made me feel rewarded for playing, and a story that gives everything that you do a purpose. So more or less everything that I've been looking for in a cozy game. And even though for some people combat is not something they're looking for in a cozy game, I personally don't mind it so long as it has a purpose and it's not like too overwhelming to everything else that's in the game. And for Fantasy Life, I feel like it balanced out wonderfully, as even though there is a fair amount of combat, there's also a lot of other things that you can do, including fishing, farming, foraging, and a whole lot of crafting. I think the ultimate thing with Fantasy Life is that it was a game that I not only couldn't stop playing when it first came out, but it's also a game that I've gone back to often. And for that reason, I think Fantasy Life is an S tier game, so I'm gonna put it there. Another game that I will praise endlessly is Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar. This again won me over because the gameplay loop is so much fun. Now, I've liked a lot of Story of Seasons games, but I can't say I really loved many of them. But that changed with Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar. Because even though it has a gameplay loop that is similar to everything that we know and love from previous Story of Seasons games, the fact that there is a weekly market that you sell all of your produce at, and that there is real cutscenes that are all voice acted, just took this to a whole new level and made this a game that I wanted to continue to keep coming back to. The farming sim mechanics in this were also a lot of fun. They've streamlined a lot of things from previous games, which I think has made a huge difference. And they've also changed up events from previous Story of Seasons games as well, which I think is one of the biggest changes that has made the biggest difference. Each with fun things for you to actually do at them, but they've also included things like competitions, including anything from horse races to crop shows, to very special events that you can unlock when you go up a friendship level with any of the characters. I can't stress enough how much I love this game, so it is also going into the S tier. Next up, let's talk about a game which I think is thoroughly underrated, and that is Spilled. Now, this is a game that is out on PC currently, but is set to come to the Nintendo Switch sometime soon, so I thought it was worth mentioning. The reason I enjoyed this so much, though, is just because it is so satisfying. And the game premise is pretty simple. It's your job to try and clean up the ocean. And this will involve you driving your boat around, moving trash into the recycling, and cleaning up oil spills. And as you do, you'll be able to see the ocean transform underneath you. And as you clean the oceans, you'll get money for your efforts, allowing you to upgrade your boat further and get even more efficient at cleaning up the ocean. I feel like this is a game kind of similar to the likes of PowerWash Sim, where it is just unbelievably satisfying to play and is a great game on those days where my brain is maybe being not so nice. And even though it's simple, it does what it does incredibly well. So for that reason, I'm gonna put it solidly in the B tier. Another underrated game which I think deserves so much more love is Love Ghostie. Now, this has been out for a while on PC, but only made its way to Nintendo Switch in 2025, and I am so glad that it did, as this is the true definition of a feel-good game. Now, the premise of this game is something you're just gonna have to bear with me for, because it is a little bit wild to explain, but it is so much fun to play. Because in this, you play as a ghost matchmaker. So you effectively haunt the house, but instead of scaring people, you help them fall in love. And the way you get to play a matchmaker in this is by setting up the characters on dates. And it's not only your job to pick the characters to go on a date, but it's also your job to try and pick the right date for them. And if you do your job successfully, the date should go incredibly well. You'll also be able to read characters' diaries to get to know them, and you'll also be able to buy and give characters gifts and pretend it's from another resident in the house to try and spark the romance a little bit more. But one of the reasons I really couldn't stop playing this is because the relationship mechanics are so unbelievably satisfying. You see, if you set up a date successfully, then you get rewarded with adorable little cutscenes of the characters having a great time. And over time, you get to see these transform as the characters fall in love with one another. Now, each playthrough of the game is probably only 3 to 6 hours long. However, this is a game that's designed to be replayed, as you'll be able to play with different characters being in the house and able to ship different characters to one another to get different cutscenes as well. And even though the relationship mechanics aren't crazy intricate, I actually loved the simplicity and just the fun of it. This is just wonderfully wholesome and I can't recommend it enough, so it's gonna go in the B tier. Next, let's talk about PowerWash Sim 2. Now at the moment this is a Switch 2 exclusive, but it's also on PC. Now the thing about PowerWash Sim games is that they're really hard to convince someone to play, but once you play it, you get the satisfaction, and it's made even better by the little ding sounds that you get whenever you successfully clean items. This to me is a game that you will play while you're watching your favorite comfort TV show or film, as it is simply a game about cleaning items with a power washer. But one thing you might not know if you've never played these games before is that actually there is a story that goes alongside of this through the text messages, and there are some people out there who absolutely love the PowerWash Sim lore. Now if you have played PowerWash Sim 1, this is more or less the same, but it does have a few upgrades, not just in the visuals but also in the gameplay, that just makes it a lot more fun to play. There's also some brand new PowerWash Sim equipment that you can use your money to upgrade to as well. Overall though, I love the PowerWash Sim franchise, and this was a really solid sequel. I will say I do prefer playing this on PC versus the Nintendo Switch 2, mainly because I prefer playing this with a mouse versus a controller, so I wish it had mouse support on the Switch 2, but either way, I'm going to put this in the A tier. Another game I've been absolutely loving is 2 Point Museum. Now, I loved 2 Point Hospital, but I was not a fan of 2 Point Campus, but thankfully 2 Point Museum has absolutely consumed me. I think the thing that really made this game stand out as opposed to both of the previous ones is the level variety. You see, in 2 Point Museum, your job is, as you would expect, looking after a museum. Now, the first level makes you think that this is going to be exactly what you'd expect, with you being in charge of a typical museum, with there mostly being items like dinosaur bones, fossils, and that sort of thing. And not only is it your job to look after the museum, but you also need to send off various staff on expeditions to try and get brand new items to display. And whilst this gameplay loop was a lot of fun, this isn't actually the reason I fell in love with the game, because soon you realize that this is basically the only normal museum you have. Because after you've done the first level and you unlock a second museum, you realize that the word museum is being used incredibly loosely in this game, and that makes it fantastic. And you find yourself in charge of anything from aquariums, which is my personal favorite. You'll also have a place where you exhibit stuff from outer space, and if you buy the DLC, you'll even have an entire zoo to look after as well. And it's this variety that meant that it's a game I've been constantly playing, because you can basically pick a museum for your mood, and if you play in the sandbox mode, you can kind of combine everything and make a mega museum, which is great as well. It is probably worth mentioning that whilst I did love this on the Nintendo Switch 2, I enjoy playing this sort of game with a mouse rather than a controller, so PC is my preferred platform. But either way, the gameplay was so fun, I'm putting it in A tier. Next up, let's talk about Caravan Make It Home. Now, this is a difficult game to cover because I have two very different experiences with it, depending on what platform I played it. Now, if you are a lover of unpacking, then this is probably going to be a great game for you, as this game essentially sees you packing up a camper van as you travel across the world. And the whole fun of this is trying to figure out the right home for each of the items that you need to place. Now, because it is a camper van, space is incredibly tight, so you'll find yourself basically putting items in every nook and cranny that you can find. But some items do have some very specific homes. And some items are a lot easier to figure out where they go than others. And I'm gonna be real, some items I really couldn't figure out where they went whatsoever, so I just dumped them on the bed. Now where it gets complicated is what platform you play it on. On the Nintendo Switch, this is very much a C-tier game. Whilst the gameplay itself is satisfying, I was not a fan with how this game looked whatsoever. As you can see here, it just doesn't look that great on the Switch. When you zoom in, things look blurry, and it wasn't the best experience. On PC, however, this is definitely a B-tier game because the visuals themselves are just so much better and make this all around a better experience. I'm gonna leave it in C-tier though because I know most people are looking to play this on the Switch. Next up, let's talk about another game I spoke about pretty recently, and that is Blueprints. And that is going in, I think, the S tier, although the end of the game makes me think I want to put it in the A tier more. But this is an incredibly fun puzzle game. The game begins with you being invited to a place called Mount Holly, and you find a letter in front of you basically saying that you are the heir to this entire estate. But in order for you to receive your inheritance, you've been told that you need to find room 46. A job which is easier said than done, considering this room is nothing but a rumor. To make matters worse, Mount Holly is not a normal estate, as this is a building filled with ever-changing rooms. Rooms where you get to decide where they're placed, with every door you walk up to giving you 3 different options. And at first your job seems to be pretty simple. You need to try and make a path without any dead ends. Because if you do hit a dead end, you'll have to restart this whole thing the very next day, where every single room you encounter will be random and different once again. But as you begin to get the hang of it and explore a little bit further, you'll realize that there's far more to the puzzles of Mount Holly than just which rooms you pick. With almost all of the rooms that you encounter having so many secrets inside of them that somehow contribute to a big story that is absolutely fantastic. Now this is most definitely a puzzle game that will not hold your hand, as the main thing that you will acquire as you do each of your many runs through Mount Holly will be your knowledge. And trust me, this is a game where you're going to want a notebook. This was honestly truly a one-of-a-kind experience. It's so hard to explain what to expect when you get into it because it's just completely unique, and genuinely the best part of this is having those eureka moments where everything starts to piece together. The only thing, in my opinion, that let this game down is the very end. The puzzles are so ridiculously hard, and it's also incredibly difficult to get the rooms you need to do the puzzles, so that part kind of let it down. But other than that, this is an incredible experience, and this is actually an experience I'd say I recommend playing with a friend. I think that's the best way to play it, with one of you writing down notes and giving suggestions, and the other one of you playing a run of the game. Next up, let's talk about Animal Crossing New Horizons, or shall I say the 3.0 update. I thought I'd throw this one in because this has been an incredibly controversial topic online. And I think we all know by now that Animal Crossing by itself, to me, is an S-tier game. It got me through the pandemic, it got me through a whole lot of stuff, and has been my comfort game for a very long time, which is why I've got well over 1,000 hours in it. The 3.0 update, however, just felt like it was good, but also more of the same. Don't get me wrong, I am so thankful that this gave me a reason to return to one of my favorite games of all time. But as someone who doesn't decorate, I would have loved to have seen more to this game than just an addition to the decorating mechanics. I think the reality is that Animal Crossing New Horizons was a game primarily made for people who love to decorate. It did all of those mechanics incredibly well. I'm just hoping that with the next Animal Crossing game, we maybe get more of a return to the life sim aspects alongside of some of the decorating. So for me, I'm going to put the Animal Crossing update in the B tier. I very much enjoyed the update. I loved coming back to the game, but it didn't really change up a lot of how I played it. Next up, let's go through another few games which I've covered before in other videos. This Seat Taken is an absolutely fantastic puzzle game, and essentially all this game is placing characters in seats, and it's your job to try and make them all happy. And even though this sounds simple at first, it can get pretty complicated, as each of the characters are pretty specific specific about where they want to sit, and they will most definitely make it known when they are not happy with where they're placed. And despite the fact that this feels like it's a pretty specific puzzle game, there is a lot of variety to each of the levels, which I love. And for that reason, I am putting this solidly in the A tier. It's a fantastic game that I just wish was longer. Then we have Tiny Bookshop, which is a very chill take on what it means to be a management game in the best possible way, as this sees you run your own tiny bookshop out of a little shed. And every day you'll pick a location to sell your books, stock the bookshop up with whatever books you think will be popular that day, and then sell them. And depending on if you picked a good location and matched the book types up well, you should see the books fly off your shelf. Now, every now and again, a customer will come in and ask for a recommendation, and you'll go through all of the books which you have stocked to try and find one that matches their description. And the best part is, every book you see here is a real book, and these are the actual blurbs for them. This is completely stress-free, but has a wonderful story going on alongside of it. I think the one thing I love about this is somehow they've made this a stress-free management game while still maintaining lots of really fun and engaging management mechanics, where your choices do still have an impact on how successful your day is going to be, just without there being any fear of going bankrupt or failing in the game whatsoever. And despite the fact that you won't see yourself manage a giant bookshop emporium, all the upgrades that you can make to your shed feel meaningful and impactful, making it a solid, I want to say, S-tier game. I enjoyed it so much and it just feels special. Then we have Discounty, which mixes together two genres I've never seen before, which is a live sim but also a shop sim. Now, the interesting part about Discounty is that you're helping your aunt out in her supermarket, and your aunt is incredibly ambitious and wants to see this supermarket grow into an entire empire. So she makes some very questionable decisions. Now, in a normal shop sim, those decisions would be absolutely fine and just a part of the game. The issue is with Discounty is that this is not just a shop sim. This is also a life sim, so you need to go and live with these decisions after they're made, meaning that your aunt's decisions while you're inside of the supermarket will very much affect your life when you walk outside of it. The wonderful part about this being a shop sim game with a story is the fact that everything you do has a purpose. It's not just about making as much money as possible. And even though the story is linear and it's not something you can change, I did enjoy it an awful lot. They've meshed these genres together so well, and for that reason, I am going to put this in the A tier. Next up, we have Undusted Letters from the Past. This has now been added to the list of games that made me cry, and I was not expecting this whatsoever when I started playing it. Now, the premise of the game is incredibly satisfying. This will see you clean and restore dirty items, and you'll get a variety of different tools to make sure that you get every single piece of dust off of it. And this gives a very ASMR-like experience, which I loved. But this isn't a game about you cleaning absolutely random objects that you find. This is a story about Adora, who returns home after her mother's passing. And she decides to start cleaning long neglected items that she finds inside her family home. And with every item that you clean, you get to learn all about them. And you get to see snippets into Adora's past that are wonderfully bittersweet. So this is essentially a game where you will satisfyingly clean objects as you cry, or at least that was my experience. And although the story was absolutely beautiful, I do wish it was longer, as this game is incredibly short. And whilst this definitely looks better on PC, this does play pretty well on the Nintendo Switch as well. So I'm going to put this solidly in the B tier, as it was such a wonderful experience. Next up, we have Dinkum. Now, I have over 50 hours of this on the PC because I started playing this way back in early access. But I was incredibly excited when I saw that it had come to the Nintendo Switch. And the way I like to describe this is being an Australian version of Animal Crossing. as this sees you leave your life in the city to start a brand new one on the Australian outback. And even though at the beginning it is just you and Grams living out your best life, it isn't long before other people start hearing about what you're doing and decide to move on out to live with you, making this a life sim where you also get to build your own little village as well. Now, I did mention how this was in the Australian outback, and this is an important thing to mention because this may not be quite as cozy as other life sims you're used to, because everything in this game wants to attack you, which checks out from all the things I've heard about Australia. So that means that you are going to have to fight back on some occasions to sort of live, you know? Now, I know I said this is an Australian version of Animal Crossing, but this does do a lot to set it apart from being like Animal Crossing. So even though you can farm, fish, and forage, this is a game though that has a little bit more direction. You'll kind of always be told what you need to do next in order to make the town bigger and better, and people will constantly have different quests for you as well, and it doesn't run on real life time. I do like this game a lot, but it definitely does not look great on the Nintendo Switch. So if you're able to play it on PC, I think that's the way to go. I will say though, this is a really fun game to play in multiplayer. So if you haven't given it a chance, I think it's definitely worthwhile. Next, we have Hello Kitty Island Adventure, one of the first games to have come out in 2025. And honestly, the thing that surprised me the most about it is how many updates we've had since it first released. Not only have we got a paid DLC, but they've also been doing a ton of different events across the year and also adding in little bits here and there to the game to make it even better than it was when I first started playing it. They've also released a Nintendo Switch 2 upgrade that makes the Switch 2 version of the game look identical to the PC version, which I've really been enjoying. Now, Hello Kitty Island Adventure, whether you love it or hate it, is one of those games that's designed to become a part of your daily routine, with there being effectively a ton of different dailies for you to do every single time you log into the game. And this could be anything from carrying out quests for the adorable Hello Kitty cast, or just trying to up your friendship level by giving them gifts. This is another game which is incredibly heavy on the fetch quests, but also the writing is so witty and it was just a lot of fun to play. So this is going to go in the A tier. Then we have Tales of the Shire. I don't know if I need to speak about this anymore, but for me personally, especially on the Switch, we're gonna go, F tier feels harsh, but it was lacking in a lot of ways. I think PC would go in C tier. Nintendo Switch goes in F tier, mainly because this is a game that's all about frolicking in the Shire. And unfortunately on the Nintendo Switch, the Shire looked like this, so you didn't really feel like you were doing much frolicking, and instead I was feeling eye strain. On the PC, it did look miles better and didn't give me motion sickness like the Nintendo Switch version did. Ultimately, I just found it to be a Hobbit life sim that just lacked all the magic that the Shire should have, and I think that's ultimately one of the biggest issues with it. Is it just had something so huge to live up to, and it just didn't quite meet the expectations a lot of us were hoping for. Then we have Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma, which I'm gonna put in, I think, the A tier actually. It's honestly been a really solid year for cozy games. Now this is way more combat heavy than any of the cozy games we've spoken about so far. And even though the combat is not difficult, it is a very core part of the game, especially towards the end, so just something to bear in mind. But the reason I loved Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma is the story. This has full cutscenes, full voice acting, and is an RPG mixed with a life sim. So not only do you get to know each of the characters through the story itself, you then also get relationship mechanics with each of them as well. Now this is a game all about trying to restore the land of Azuma, and to do that you need to travel to each of the towns and uncover the gods which have long gone lost. And each town that you help restore, you'll actually wind up sort of running, allowing you to place different buildings. You can also decorate them and even set up things like farms, which will help gain you resources passively as well. The fact that this is an RPG, a life sim, and a city builder kind of all in one in a way that worked just made this a really fun and unique experience. It's definitely not a cozy game for everyone, but if you like a good story, This one is a really fun game. Next up, we have Town to City. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about this game in this video, but I've been really enjoying it, and despite the fact that it's still in early access, I wanted to just talk about it. Now, firstly, this game is absolutely freaking stunning. I love the way this looks and this plays. And this essentially sees you build a 19th century Mediterranean town. And you need to turn this from being a completely empty spot of land into this being an entire city. And of course, you're in charge of everything, allowing you to place all the paths, all the buildings, and deciding where each family get to live. But this is a little bit different to every other management game type I've played, in that this is not stressful whatsoever. Because even though there are mechanics like money and happiness levels, it's not too difficult to manage. And even though I'm really bad at decorating and honestly making anything that looks vaguely aesthetic, this game makes it so easy. The buildings snap to the roads. The decorations just immediately look great wherever you place them. So regardless of whether you love to decorate or not, you're going to make an absolutely gorgeous city. And you can either play this in a campaign mode, which talks you through each of the mechanics and even starts to introduce brand new areas and maps as well, or you can play this completely in sandbox mode. And even though this is still in early access, it really doesn't feel like it. I didn't encounter any bugs in my time at playing it, nor many roadblocks whatsoever, but it is worth mentioning that they do still have a couple of updates left to go before the game fully releases sometime in the second half of 2026. And despite being not quite finished, I've had a blast playing it, so I'm honestly going to put this in A tier. Next, we have Strange Antiquities. Now, I did put this in my top 10 cozy games of 2025 list, so it should surprise no one that this is going to go in the A tier. This is another game which I think deserves so much more love. And if this looks familiar, this is made by the same people who did Strange Horticulture. Now, this sees you run your very own antique store. And if you're thinking that this game might have a little bit of a creepy vibe to it, you would be absolutely correct. Now, every day, customers will come into your shop asking for an item that can do a very specific thing. And it's your job to use this to try and find a corresponding item which will do exactly that. And this will involve you searching through an encyclopedia to find out exactly which item will do what they want, and use the description from the book to try and match it to an item inside of your shop. And at first, the items seem pretty obvious, but as the game goes on, you'll need to use all of your senses to figure out if the item is the exact one they're after. And even though this mechanic is a lot of fun, there's way more to the game than just that. As sometimes you'll receive clues to where artifacts may be hidden, and it's your job to figure out where on the map they are, and if you're successful, that item will be added to your shop. It's also worth bearing in mind that your shop deals with very powerful items, so you get to choose whether or not you want to give someone the correct item to help them, or if you maybe don't want them to get up to what they're saying they want to do, and instead purposefully give them the wrong item. This mixes together a good story with really fun and unique puzzle mechanics that makes this a fantastic game and why it's in A tier. Then we have Date Everything. It's safe to say that this is an absolutely ridiculous game that may not appeal to everyone. However, this is also absolutely fantastic. The game begins with you losing your job to AI. But pretty soon after you're let go, you find that a very special pair of sunglasses are delivered to your house. And these sunglasses make all of the inanimate objects in your house appear as humans. Humans which you can either get to know or you can date. It's completely up to you. But whether or not you can successfully get to know them better depends on whether or not you say the right things to them. The best part of this, though, is the fact that every single character is voice acted by some incredibly talented voice actors. And you may recognize an awful lot of the voices that you hear. You'll also never be able to predict what on earth is going to happen in this game. Every time I come across a brand new character, I am blown away at just how wacky and wild their whole story is. This is a game that just makes me smile every time I play it, but I'm going to put it in B tier because whilst I love it, I know it's not a game for everyone. Next up, we have Wanderstop. Now, currently this isn't on the Nintendo Switch. However, I feel like it's only a matter of time till this comes to the Nintendo Switch too. Now, this is a game where you definitely need to know what you're getting into, because if you think this is primarily a tea shop management game, you might be a little bit disappointed. Because although this is a game where you manage a tea shop, this is instead all about the story. In this, you play as Alter, who was once a great warrior who now manages a tea shop in a magical forest. And although that might sound like a dream come true to many of us, this is Alter's worst nightmare, and she absolutely hates it. And she wants more than anything for this tea shop to purely be nothing but a brief and painful memory. But unfortunately, the tea shop is exactly where she is right now, so it's her job to learn the stories of those who pass through the shop and make the tea that is just right for them. And this will involve not only growing your own ingredients, but also brewing the tea completely from scratch. But this isn't a game where you try and manage a tea shop, make money, and improve it over time. But instead, this is a story about someone who was once the world's greatest warrior, who now can't even pick up her own sword, and is right now, in her eyes, just someone who works at a tea shop. It is worth mentioning that as beautiful as this game is, it deals with a lot of very heavy topics, and whilst it handles these topics with great care, this is definitely not a game for everyone. It's kind of similar to the vibes of Spiritfarer, but instead of it being centered around grief, it is all about things like burnout, and can definitely hit very close to home if you've experienced anything similar to what she has. I think this is absolutely beautiful, so I am going to put it in A tier, and I just hope that it comes to the Switch too soon, because it was such a great experience. The final game on today's list is Winter Burrows. Now, I like to explain this as being a great beginner survival game. Now, in this, you play as an adorable mouse who has returned from the big city, only to find their childhood home in absolute ruins. You also discover that your aunt, who was meant to be looking after this place, has also gone missing. So it's your job to try and find her. But this isn't quite like your normal cozy games, as this has a few added mechanics to kind of contend with. The biggest of which is the fact that it is absolutely freezing outside, so you need to make sure your mouse remains warm, so you can only be outside for a certain amount of time. You also have hunger to contend with, so you need to find food, cook it, and keep your little mouse fed. And even though at first you can't really go out for a long amount of time before needing to return back to your home, as you go, you'll be able to collect resources that allow you to craft different items that allow you to stay warmer longer and make better meals. But this isn't just a survival game, there's also a story where you get to make brand new friends and ultimately find out what happened to your house and also your aunt. Now, the nice thing about this game is this is a very beginner-friendly survival game, so don't worry, your mouse will not die. If you get too cold or too hungry, your mouse just simply passes out, leaves all the belongings there, and gets transported directly back to its home. So there's no failing, no starting this game all over again, nothing like that. The worst thing that you'll have to do is just retrace your steps to find all of your items again. That being said, there are definitely some less cozy aspects to this game, the big one being the giant bugs, which you have to not only fight off, but you're also able to cook their meat into food. But the worst part about the bugs is definitely the screeching noise they make when they attack you. I wish this was something that was more avoidable, because it's definitely a different vibe to the rest of the game, so just something to bear in mind. Another thing that might make or break this game for you is if you're someone who is directionally challenged, like I myself am, you might find navigating around a little bit difficult. Because at least of what I've seen so far, there has been no map. So you need to sort of find your bearings using things like footsteps, twigs, and little bush landmarks. And I quite often found myself freezing to death while trying to find my way back home. So if you're someone who's prone to getting lost in Wilderlands, you may struggle with this one. But overall, this was a really fun and different type of cozy game that I really enjoyed. It may not be for everyone, but if you do like the looks of it, I think you'll have a great time with it. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. You know what the best part of me just doing this is it's made me realize how good 2025 was for cozy games. There are so many games on this list that are in the S and the A tier compared to years before. Hopefully this video has somewhat helped you find either new videos to add to your list, or maybe remove a few that don't look like your cup of tea anymore. And if you want to see some of the best games coming out in 2026 for cozy gamers, click this video here.